All right, guys, it's Dakota with Pastime Production. Today I'm going to be going over what I do with the back legs off of a whitetail deer. What I like to do is I have my main container that I keep the big chunk in, and then I just got a cutting board, and I just keep a cookie sheet here. After I get done slicing the steaks up, I put it on the cookie sheet. I also got a bucket down here for the fat and stuff like that I'll throw in later. My back legs, I like to stake out basically the whole back leg. And what I do is I'll go up here where this Achilles tendon is. It follows up. I'll come on down, work down to this joint right here. And then on the back side here, I'll basically follow the bone down all the way to where this, I don't know if you guys can see the ball there with the ball and socket. I follow that all the way down, and I'll trim all the meat around that entire leg bone there all the way around to basically where the chunk of meat will come off of this entire leg bone, and then I can dissect the meat into the sections that I want, get the cuts of meat that I want. All right, so basically, I just cut all the meat off, left with the bone here and the shank. Now I'm gonna throw it back over here, and then what I'm gonna do is, it kind of looks like a mess sitting here looking at this whole thing. I like to flip it over, and then you can either, if you have trouble finding like the solid chunks of meat in here, you can always trim up the fat first, and I'm probably gonna do that so you can see it better. So I'll trim all this fat off first, but typically what I do is, like you got a nice section of meat here, I would cut that out, and then I would just trim all the fat off at once. With that section there, I'll just flip it on its back and just take the fat off. But for the purpose of this video, I'm gonna go ahead and just try to trim off all this fat real quick, and then you guys can see kind of what the whole, the chunks of meat look like. So now we're pretty well left with a ball of meat. I mean, we got some, some trimmings we still need to do on this, but you can see the cuts of meat on this a lot better now. You can tell like this piece is going to come off right here. Then you got this whole section of meat here, and we'll just progress our way through. We can cut through there. So what I do is I just start at one side and pretty well work my way in, and then we'll stake everything out. So right here you can see this big ball muscle here. We'll just follow it around. And it almost just wants to tear apart right there. I'm going to go ahead and throw that back in there for now. And then we got this piece here, just tears right on off. This piece here, nice chunk of meat there. Now I think a lot of people end up using this for roast, but I don't like doing that. I like cooking steaks. I like grilling. So I pretty well just try to stake everything out. And then, so right here, you can see there's some tissue between here. So we're gonna cut this piece of meat off of all of this. Okay, so I am not a butcher. Not gonna pretend to be. I'm just a guy that's always, cut up my own stuff and everything. I can tell you this chunk of meat here, the one I just cut off, you definitely want to get rid of this. That's a gland in there, and if you don't get rid of that, everything it's gonna taste awful. So just go ahead and cut this off, throw that in the scrap bin, a little scrap bucket down there, and move on. That's all we're doing. We're basically just cutting it at the seams. Like you can see right here, our seam there. So we're just going to keep working on it. So this is all the meat that was off of that back leg. We have the shank here as well. I'm just going to leave it up there for now, but this is kind of what everything we were left with. So now what I like to do is I like to just start off with one thing and trim it up and then go ahead and cut it into my steak. So I'm just going to take this piece of meat here. Now, a lot of people will just, take the fat off and then they'll use it as a roast or something. But like I said, I'm more of a grilling kind of guy. So I'll get it trimmed up and then steak it out. All right, guys, I got this trimmed up how I like it now. So if you were to fold this out, we could cut this up into smaller muscle groups, but I don't like to. What I like to do is I like to kind of hold it up like this, and then I'll just go ahead and cut me some steaks out of it. Now, if you look at it, you can see the different muscle groups here, but I think that if I were to go through and trim this out and trim all of this out here, that I would be left with basically nothing. So what I like to do is I like to just cook it like this, and then whenever it's time to eat it, then I just don't eat that little tendon there. It seems to work pretty well for us. I know that if you sit here and you try to cut all of that out of there, you end up with just a pile of meat that you almost just have to grind, because then you end up with just a little piece here, a little piece here, and a little piece there. It'd end up being 3 pieces. And I'm right back to where I began on the last piece. All I'm going to do at first is just trim all of this fat off here. You do not want to leave the fat on. Not a good taste. It'll make you not like deer meat. Okay, guys, so we're sitting here looking at this chunk of meat here. And I don't know if you all can tell, but the grain on it is running like this. So what I'm going to end up doing is cutting against the grain on it. So the grain is kind of doing this right here. So I'm going to end up cutting like that, my steaks into like this. And this is another one of those pieces that would be a good roast. I mean, you could get quite a few roast off the back. I just prefer staking it out. Also, if a person wanted to, I know it's not the same as a tenderloin or whatever, but you could definitely tenderize this, get it thin, and then fry it out. It's good like that as well. Now on this piece here, this is where when the deer was hanging, this was exposed to the oxygen. So I actually do like cutting this off. I don't know if you have to. I'm just telling you what I do. I know there's probably gonna be a lot of people in here roasting me over it, but I'm gonna cut this off. I don't like the darkness on there, so I'll cut it off. And then this is a pretty lean piece of meat right here, though. There's not much fat on it. And that right there, I'm just gonna cook that. Just put that on the grill just like that. I'm not even gonna cut it up anymore. Like I said, I'm probably gonna get roasted for not knowing the cuts of meat. That's okay. Never went to butcher school, but I got this little skinny piece of meat here. Probably not the technical name, but all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trim it up, and then I'm probably gonna cook it just the whole thing like this on the grill. It'd be real good. Warmed up a little bit on me. This meat is I typically like cutting it up when it's dang near froze. The meat's stiff. It seems like it's just a lot easier to work up. There we go. So I would call that good. I don't want to get too carried away on it. That'd be just fine. Most of this will end up cooking off whenever you cook it on the grill anyways. Same thing with every piece of meat, just cutting off any of that dark brown stuff and the fat. Throw it in the waste bucket. I would say the majority of what I'm cutting up on this back leg will be steak. There'll be very little grind on the back. I do end up grinding the front legs on them. But as far as the back legs, I like to stake them all out. And I also would like to say, if anybody's got any pointers on something, or if you want to see something a little bit more close up or whatever, these are the first 2 deer I've gotten this year as far as whitetail go. And my wife and I usually, I don't know, we're hoping to get 8 more of them. So, you know, I can always do another follow-up video or kind of whatever you guys are thinking you need. I do cut a lot of the blood out too, like where they've clotted up or tried clotting up and stuff. Like you'll see a lot of guys where they shoot them in the shoulder with a rifle, you end up just having so much wasted meat on those front shoulders. I mean, you have to cut it out of there. You can't just leave it. Yeah, so I got this piece of meat here. The thing is, if you get carried away with coming in here and cutting all this meat off and doing all that on where these tendons are, you'll end up losing. You'll have so much meat loss. So I really do like to cook these with the tendons left in them like that, and then it's not hard to just scrape your meat off of it whenever you get done cooking. That's the way I like doing it. Yeah, so this is a nice piece of meat here too. If you wanted to, I mean, you could smoke this. That's probably what I should do with it. So you could cook this to where it's like, you would smoke it like you would a brisket. You don't want to take that to 200 degrees, but you could definitely take it to like you would a sirloin tip or something. Just take it to 132, 135 degrees, and that'd be a perfect thing to do. So I'm probably actually going to do that with this. Just do a little slow cook on it. So now, all I'm left with, this is all the meat that I'm left with off this back leg. And this is all going to end up being grind meat for me. None of that's going to be any kind of steaks that I'm going to use. So I'm just going to end up grinding these. And then I have my shank here. So there is a joint, obviously. There's a joint right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find that joint with my knife, and then I'll cut off the femur, and then I'll be left with just the shank, and then I'll freeze the shank whole and then cook it like that. So yeah, you can see where that joint hinges right there. So I'm just going to go on the back side of that, work around on the sides. I'm not gonna lie, I gotta bend it around a few times to find exactly what I'm looking for here. There we go. Went right through it. All right. So that's what my shank that's left over, and then, you know, person wanted to take just a little bit of this meat that's left on here, throw it in a grind pile. But basically, I mean, this is all you're left with. I end up with quite a few steaks here. Got a little piece of roast here I'm gonna smoke, and then I got a grind pile here, which I got to trim this up more. I'm not gonna just straight grind that. I'll trim that up because there's some fat on there and stuff. All right, guys, so that's how I like working up the back legs on my deer or whatever I've shot. I have a food saver over here that I use this vac seal. So I just write on what my package is going to be. I'll write on it, say, hey, it's steaks or it's roast or shank, whatever it is. And like I was saying, if you guys have any questions about what I've done here, or if you have pointers, whatever, I'm welcome to it all. I know that if you have questions, I could also post more videos because we'll be getting a lot more deer this year, but I try not to grind up that much of it. It's too good of steaks to be grinding. I'm not much on making deer sticks or deer sausage or anything like that. I like to have food that we're going to eat. I mean, we try to live a lot of our meals are wild game. So that this is kind of what works for us. I know some people, they can go through and just grind everything. They'll mix some pork fat in and get some deer sausage and that kind of stuff. That's all cool as long as you're eating it. Doesn't matter to me. But yeah, any questions or anything, I can do another video on another back leg whenever I shoot another deer, or my wife does. And yeah, that's how I like doing it.